All right, so you were talking about the complete ineptitude of British law. Let's talk about how American law can be completely weaponized. And we know this because, the one of the main figures of this segment that we're about to talk about, Letitia James, is the Attorney General of New York. And she has been weaponizing lawfare for a while. She was the one who filed a lawsuit in 2022 against Donald Trump in the state of New York, where it's passed through in February. The ruling came through, and he was fined $355 million and barred from operating his business in New York for 3 years, I think it is.
Just punishment for paying back people who loaned him money.
Yes, exactly. Very unfair. Don't you understand? New York business practice is if you borrow money from somebody, you don't pay it back. You don't know the rules of usury, Callum.
Is she the DA?
She's the Attorney General.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes.
Sorry for the interruption. I'm Father Calvin Robinson, and you can watch my Common Sense Crusade at 3 p.m. on Thursdays only on lotuseaters.com, where you can sign up for as little as £5 per month. Deus Vult.
And a while back now, it seems that she set her sights on a website, a rather controversial website called VDare. Now, are either of you aware of this website? So they are an anti-immigration website who have been sounding the alarm on America's immigration troubles ever since the late 1990s, started by a character called Peter Brimlow, who's an Englishman who moved to America decades ago, emigrated over there, and has been branded by all of the usual organizations, the ADL, SPLC, as a white supremacist, a white nationalist, because of the fact that he says that America used to be a real country, bro. Can we have it go back to being a real country? And all of the establishment says, no, that they're not. And he's platformed people like, he's appeared on platforms with people like Jared Taylor in the past. And they say that he's evil, he's not allowed to have a voice. And Letitia James has been filing subpoena after subpoena at VDare, his website, to bankrupt them to ensure that he cannot operate his own platform and give people with dissident views a voice. Now,
so he can.
He did speech.
Yes.
And she's decided that's a crime.
Yes, I think that it's kind of a little known document, a Bill of Rights, where it might be one of the first parts of it that
the Constitution.
The Constitution, yes. Not many have heard of this. It's forbidden knowledge in America. But this whole thing where you're not allowed to do that. You have to let people speak up and have their say, especially if you're able to independently fund it, for instance.
He committed the ultimate crime, though, of noticing.
Well, interesting.
It's a double whammy, noticing and then saying something about what you've noticed.
Interestingly enough, one of the people who's most well known from VDare is a man called Steve Saylor, who recently has a publication coming out, a book of a lot of essays that he's written called Noticing, where he talks about things like crime statistics and even going even further into the minutiae of having I read an article of his talking about the George Floyd effect, which was that after George Floyd's death was broadcast in the media and on social media, you see a massive uptick in the number of car crashes among black communities, specifically blacks in America, presumably because of the fact that they weren't being policed as much on the roads because police officers were just afraid to pull over black suspects.
There is another theory.
Oh, yes, go on.
So it also happened to go out with a lot of the stimulus checks, and there's this big bump in buying a certain kind of car, which I don't know anything about.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Apparently, a lot of people decided to drive their cars because they like that car, rather recklessly.
Yeah. So Steve Saylor and others who are professional noticers who go through, professionally collected government statistics, which are broadcast publicly that you're able to find easily if you do a Google search, but you're not allowed to talk about. They're not just rabid evil people who say, crime statistics, we've got to kill them all. No, they're people who look into all of this and then suggest, here's some solutions to this. Why don't we apply the laws evenly? Why don't we apply the laws fairly? Why don't we look into the reasons for the culture that generates this behavior and try and fix it so that people aren't killing themselves on the roads, for instance? Evil white racist kind of things to do, holding to standards.
Trying to build a society.
Yes, like white supremacists do.
Right.
Again, the crime really is noticing pattern recognition. I think there's a moral equivalency between noticing patterns and, lynching.
Genocide. Yes.
Yeah, being sort of an Auschwitz guard or a Belsen guard.
Do you know how Hitler started? He was looking through German crime statistics. Mein Gott!
They're basically,
don't do any.
They're basically equivalent,
Yeah. So I'll go through the information. They put out this post saying that all of their resources are now focused on what they're describing as a death struggle. VDare will continue publishing on a reduced scale as long as it can, at least until after our April 26th to 28th conference. But as Christ said on the cross, it is finished. They published an article about it that was linked on this, and I'll read through some of this. So it's Peter Brimlow himself talking. He says, I launched VDare.com on Christmas Eve 1999, perhaps appropriate on Good Friday, that he has to announce the crucifixion, as he's dubbing it, by the Communist Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James. He says that they've been fighting her at a cost of up to $1 million for nearly 3 years, but now they're literally hanging on the cross. And they point out they have not been charged with anything because they are not guilty of anything. They say there is no legitimate explanation for her enormous fishing expedition other than a desire to nail them on the cross with compliance costs. She was claimed to be interested in our purchase of a Berkeley Springs castle, which I believe is in West Virginia, as a conference venue, because I watched, interestingly enough, last night, Aura McIntyre hosted a discussion, an interview with one of their contributors, who's a mutual of mine, called James Kirkpatrick, where he spoke a lot about this. So what happened was, VDare, years ago, over 2016 to 2019, were trying to host conferences where they could have people come up and give speeches on particular subjects. Every time that they tried to get a venue for a conference, whether it be a hotel or anywhere else, they would get cancelled on. They started to add clauses into the contracts to say you will face a financial penalty if you cancel on us, but they would still cancel on them because of either media pressure or literally Antifa would just threaten the venues. They would get bomb threats, so they just had to cancel them. So instead, they decided, well, let's get our own venue. So they purchased this castle, which was apparently a bargain deal for it.
I really want to host more right-wing conferences in castles.
I know.
It's just a brilliant idea.
If you could, why not, right? And this attracted the attention of the New York Attorney General. And you would ask yourself, well, they operate in Virginia. The castle is in Virginia. Why is it that this has New York? Well, in 1999, when they were put forward, when they were listed as a non-profit, the lawyer filed everything in New York, which apparently puts it under her jurisdiction. So since then, because of the fact that they bought that castle, they've decided that they are going to throw subpoena after subpoena after subpoena at them without charging them with anything. Because all it means is that you have to release information that's otherwise anonymous or confidential to her office, which then gets leaked out. And they're worried. Well, obviously, this is a costly process. The most recent one, they say, would cost up to about $150,000 because they not only have to release financial information, but also emails as part of this. And they have a lot of anonymous writers who are part of, say, the Border Patrol and also part of departments in the US government who want to write on subjects without having their identities out there because what they're saying about them might cost them their jobs and actively put them in danger. They don't care. The Attorney General's office in the US, in the New York State, do not care, and they want to have this information so it can be leaked accidentally. Sure, it's just an intern, and ruin them both reputationally by saying if you write for this website, your name, if you're trying to write anonymously, will be leaked, or they just want to financially ruin them. And it seems that they are financially ruining them. So they say in here, on March 27th, 2024, in another of her lightning-fast compliant rulings, New York State Supreme Court Judge Sabrina Krause held us in contempt of court because we have not yet complied, because we were fighting it, with her January 2023 order, where we meet James's massive and crippling subpoena demands. Judge Krause did modify her earlier order to reflect the intervention of the Institute for Free Speech, so now we no longer have to reveal explicitly the names of our pseudonymous writers, some of whom would certainly be fired from their jobs if their identities were leaked. But we are still now required to review 40 gigabytes of emails, an enormous amount, and of course these could in fact reveal the names of those pseudonymous writers anyway, so they don't have to explicitly reveal them, but if they hand over all of these emails, well, the names might be in there anyway and they'll get leaked. as well as our donors, privileged communications with lawyers, etc. Judge Krause also now allowed us to redact these emails, but this is a huge task which our lawyers estimate could cost us as much as $150,000. An observer tells us this order is more typical of major corporate litigation, not a tiny charity. And perversely, although Judge Krause has now modified her January 23, 2023 order, she is nevertheless now fining us $250 a day for not complying with it. So no legal charges brought against them, no legitimate reason for doing this. They just found an opportunity to financially ruin them through lawfare.
This really makes me think about the United States. The only way to operate there seems to be, if you're going to have political opinions at all, or even want property rights, you have to be somewhere as red as Florida, and just move wherever that sort of control and defense.
Well, they're in Virginia, but this was simply because of a legal loophole because of where the documents were filed by a lawyer when the website started in 1999. They didn't predict that this would happen.
Yeah, I get
or that they would have Letitia James on their back trying to rabidly destroy them.
Move to Mexico then. I don't know.
Yeah,
yeah. Genuinely, this is awful.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And for Peter Brimlow, once again, if you go on his Wikipedia, you see that he's listed with all of the same titles that you would expect of someone who says, hey, maybe America shouldn't just be a pit stop for the third world. American white supremacist writer, anti-immigration website associated with, that's a nice weasel word right there, associated with, which means we've not really got any evidence of it, but we want to assert it anyway. White supremacy, white nationalism, and the alt-right. And what does it say in his views and publications? Well, let's read what kind of things that he has to say. Brimlow opposes both illegal and legal immigration, despite having immigrated to the United States himself. Oh my God, an Englishman immigrating to the United States, that's unheard of. And has referred to Spanish-speaking immigrants as completely dysfunctional. He said California used to be a paradise, but was rapidly turning into a Hispanic slum. This is just, as far as I can tell from everything I see, correct.
Noticing 101.
Yep. Brimlow has been described as, by who? A white nationalist and white supremacist. In 2020, he tried to sue the New York Times for labeling him a white nationalist. In 2022, he called for a reversal of Brown v. Board of Education, a 1954 Supreme Court decision that directed an end to segregated schools. Now, some people
so did all the critical race theorists.
Well, yeah, some people might disagree with him on that, but like you say, the critical race theorists don't. And even if you read somebody who's kind of not mainstream right, but not far right, certainly Thomas Sowell, in a lot of his writings, talks about the absolute disaster for black education that was the busing program that came out. Yeah, exactly. That came out of Brown v. Board. So this is not necessarily a controversial view, unless, of course, you want to brand somebody a dissident, a white supremacist.
Because there's one thing, isn't there, the end of segregation, and then a different thing is forced integration.
Like what happened at Little Rock, for instance, where they literally sent the US government army to point guns at white people to force the integration. The Southern Poverty Law Center has described Brimlow's website VDARE, because the SPLC, they're the most trustworthy source, as a hate group that was once relatively mainstream anti-immigration page, but by 2003 became a meeting place for many on the radical right. The SPLC also criticized VDARE for publishing articles by white nationalists, Jared Taylor and Sam Francis. It's been called white nationalist by the Rocky Mountain News. Once again, all of this just not actually referring to anything from the website, any of their views. Just here's a load of third parties who are politically compromised saying that they're evil.
I also thought Jared Taylor was a Japanese man because he was born and raised in Japan and speaks fluent Japanese.
Was raised in their culture. Actually, his first book was about Japanese culture and how much he appreciated it. So, I mean, seems pretty integrated to me. Average Japanese man. It's also been described as white supremacist. VDARE has also been described by the Anti-Defamation League as a racist anti-immigrant group. The book Anti-Immigration in the United States summarized Brimlow's position as being that whites had built American culture and should defend it against non-whites who would try to change it.
I don't know, because I haven't read the guy, but assuming, to be honest, if he's an English guy, he probably isn't actually even in the realm of whites versus non-whites. If you actually talk to him, I reckon he'd be like, well, not the French.
I mean,
like, this is the thing about English people.
Like,
we don't usually default to this because we know that white in America actually means Anglo-Saxon usually. It's the reason that the term WASP as well.
Yes, I mean, there is the...
Just assuming.
There's the Anglo-Saxon founding stock of America, which is the Anglo-Saxons and some of the Scots and Celts as well.
The reason they're part of the Anglosphere, not the Francophone.
Yes, but once again, the point of this is not necessarily whether you agree with him or not. It's whether he should have the right to have a platform for his own views, which the New York Attorney General's office has decided, no, you don't.
I thought they had freedom of speech over there, freedom of expression. Well, I'm sorry. I thought this was America. Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought this was America. And interestingly,
Yeah, she's clearly a partisan. Isn't there a video of her in a few years back just openly saying, I'm going to get Trump?
yes,
That's her, right? It's the same woman.
I believe so. So in this,
Like, we'll find out. We'll find something on him. We'll get something on. We'll do Trumped-up charges on him somehow. Well, that's not
Law.
the law. The law should be blind.
that's a vendetta.
Yeah, just a political
Well, in
partisan.
this article from the American Conservative, they have some quotes as such. So they say her electoral platform was built on this very promise. She vowed to shine a bright light into every dark corner of Donald Trump's real estate dealings, just like she promised to take tougher legal action on organizations that engage in online hate speech against protected classes. Except James cannot actually take legal action against VDARE for their hate speech against protected classes because, as they point out, and as we've pointed out, it's protected under the First Amendment. So she can't actually bring, again, any legal challenges to it other than just saying, we're just going to keep subpoenaing you because it costs a lot of money to deal with legal
The
challenges.
thought process is obviously, how can we subvert the system to destroy them anyway?
Yeah, and in here they point out that, in New York and other places, it's not exactly like other places don't do something similar. So American Institute for Economic Research has a mansion. Aspen Institute has a ski resort. BLM bought mansions. They don't care about that. They're not subpoenaing BLM anytime soon. The Aspen Institute is not going to have people digging into their records for 3 years over their ski resort. It just gets targeted at dissidents. That's all it gets targeted at. The legal case against VDARE's castle now appears to hinge on whether or not the founders of VDARE use it as their own personal dwelling, which they don't.
Funnily enough, I don't want to live in a bloody castle.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I'd love to live in a castle.
Yeah, you would.
And again, James Kirkpatrick in here talks about what is actually going on was that the first few requests for subpoenas that they got came from the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit. You couldn't make it any more subtle, could you? Couldn't have just had it from not the Hate Crimes Unit. Couldn't have just gone do we have a financial team that we can get these sent in from if that's what we're looking into? No, it's the Hate Crime Division.
Like The Simpsons. The vans are always named something weird whenever it's the CIA in The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah. Actual ice cream van, stuff like that.
Totally a
surprised-
pizza place.
I'm surprised it's not the other way around. They don't call it the Ministry of Love.
Yeah.
Something, like in 1984, like the Committee for Love or something like that,
Yeah, I suppose
rather
so.
than hate.
And this has been getting about a little bit, though, because even the SPLC had to speak about how Tucker Carlson spoke to Peter Brimlow's wife, Lydia Brimlow, who spoke about this whole situation. And of course, they present it as this. Tucker Carlson platforms white nationalist on X. No, he speaks to somebody who's being persecuted by the state and denied her free speech rights. That's what's actually going on. But the SPLC are an evil organization who hate America. That's just clear.
Tucker's basically evil at this point, right? Again, there's no sort of moral distinction between sort of the leader of a KKK chapter and a monster like Tucker Carlson who would platform that, woman.
Have you? All I'm saying is, have you ever seen Tucker Carlson and a KKK leader in the same room at the same time?
No, therefore they're
No.
the same people.
It's all the same person.
Exact same person. Grand Wizard Tucker, confirmed. He's going to come on into one of his interviews accidentally wearing the hood and go, oh, no, I forgot to take it off. Oh, sorry, can we start? Oh, we're live? Oh, no.
That's just my head warmer.
Let me just warm myself with this tiki torch I've got here. I mean, come on.
That would be a good sketch.
Come on. Just do it, Tucker. It'd be funny. Just for the troll. Do it. And Matt Walsh has spoken about it as well. So it's good that people are starting to highlight this. But the thing it highlights as well is the fact that obviously the regime is completely against any form of dissident speech, is that the US legal system is now so compromised to the point that you do not even have to have any charges against an organization or an individual to find legal ways to screw with them and bankrupt them and tarnish their reputation. There's all you need is any loophole to get a subpoena in there and you are screwed, because dealing with any kind of legal difficulties is expensive. And so I don't know if VDare have a way to donate to them if you want to try and support, even if you don't agree with them, if you want to try and support independent dissident speakers in America who actually care about the state of the country and where it's going, maybe find some way of supporting them.
Or, I guess the AG is an elected position, fund one of her opponents, who isn't an open leftist partisan.
That might be harder, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Sure.
But do try.
Yeah. It'd be nice if, we've talked about this before, if Elon could do a reverse George Soros. Be a bizarro George Soros and just fund loads of
right-wing DAs.
Yeah, not even right wing, just reasonable, balanced ones. Or right wing, let's be good. But yeah, just
insane people.
Yeah.
But
people that aren't
America's running out of those.
People that aren't committed to destroying again the fabric of society. Be nice.
Anyway, there we go.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as Lads Hour, this episode on conspiracy theories. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.